I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who signed up for personal training sessions. But then again, I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who felt invisible in her own marriage either. It started with small things. My husband Dan had stopped noticing me, stopped complimenting me, stopped reaching for me at night. I told myself it was normal after so many years together that we were just comfortable. But deep down, I knew better, so I joined a gym. I told myself it was for my health, that I wanted to feel stronger, more confident. But maybe, just maybe, I wanted someone to notice me again. That's how I met Travis. He was tall, built like he belonged on a magazine cover, with arms that flexed every time he moved and a cocky smile that made my stomach tight in ways I hadn't felt in years. He was younger than me, maybe late 20s, but he carried himself with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. "First time working with a trainer?" he asked, eyeing me as I stood there awkwardly in my new leggings, trying not to feel completely out of place. I nodded. "Yeah, I'm not exactly in shape." His smirk deepened. "You're here, aren't you? That's more than most people can say." His voice was smooth, easy, and when he placed a hand on my lower back to guide me toward the weights, I felt a jolt of something I shouldn't have. At first, it was just training. He corrected my form, pushed me harder than I thought I could go, encouraged me when I wanted to quit. But then the small touches lasted a little longer. His eyes lingered when I bent over to stretch. And the way he smiled at me, it wasn't the way a trainer looked at just any client. I told myself it was nothing, that I was imagining it. Until one evening when the gym was nearly empty and he leaned in just a little too close, his breath warm against my ear.
By the way, if you're curious about what happened next, subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Thank you.
"You ever wonder what it feels like to be truly seen?" My breath hitched. And that was the moment I knew this was going to be a problem. I should have shut it down right then and there. Should have laughed it off, ignored the way his voice sent a slow heat through my body, and reminded myself that I was a married woman. But I didn't. Instead, I stood there frozen, feeling his breath warm against my skin, his words sinking in deeper than they should have. "You ever wonder what it feels like to be truly seen?" Yes. God, yes. I cleared my throat, stepping back just enough to put space between us. "Travis," he smirked as if he already knew exactly what I was about to say. "Relax, it's just a question." But we both knew it was. For the next few sessions, things changed. The touches got longer, the eye contact lingered, the teasing turned into something heavier, and worst of all, I let it happen. One evening after an especially intense workout, I sat on a bench trying to catch my breath. My body was sore in the best way, my muscles burning from the weight he had just pushed me through. Travis sat next to me, wiping sweat from his forehead with the hem of his shirt, exposing just enough of his stomach to make my mouth go dry. "You keep this up, you're gonna have men falling at your feet," he said, his voice low, teasing. I laughed, shaking my head. "I don't think my husband would appreciate that." He tilted his head, studying me in that way that always made me feel exposed. "Does he even notice?" The question sent a sharp jolt through me. I opened my mouth to say, "Of course he does." To defend my marriage, to tell Travis that Dan still cared, still wanted me. But the words never came, because the truth was I wasn't sure. Travis must have seen something in my expression, because his smirk softened, his voice dropping lower. "You deserve to be noticed, Claire." My breath caught. I should have left, should have ended the session and walked out before this went any further. Instead, I just sat there, feeling my pulse hammer in my throat, my entire body buzzing from more than just the workout. And then, without thinking, without planning, without any excuse left to hold onto, I leaned in. And Travis, he didn't stop me. The second our lips met, it was like something inside me snapped. Months, years of feeling unseen, untouched, undesired, it all came rushing to the surface at once. Travis didn't hesitate. His hands were on me instantly, rough and confident, pulling me closer like he had been waiting for this as long as I had. His grip was firm, his mouth demanding, his body radiating heat that made my stomach tighten in ways I hadn't felt in so long. I should have stopped. I should have pulled away, told him this was a mistake, reminded myself that I had a husband waiting for me at home. But I didn't. Instead, I melted into him, letting his hands explore my body like he owned it, like he had every right to. His fingers slid over my arms, my waist, gripping me in a way that made my breath hitch. He kissed me deeper, hungrier, like he knew I had been craving this, needing this. The gym was almost empty, the sound of distant weights clanking in the background, but in that moment there was only us. Only the fire burning between our bodies, only the way my fingers curled into his shirt, pulling him closer, only the way I wanted. And God help me, I wanted. "Claire," he murmured against my lips, his breath ragged. "You sure about this?" I wasn't sure about anything anymore, but I didn't stop, I didn't say no. And when his hand slid down my back, gripping my hips, pressing me flush against his solid body, I knew I had just crossed a line I could never take back. The moment I left the gym, reality came crashing back down. My skin was still tingling from Travis's touch, my lips swollen from his kisses, but none of that mattered now. What mattered was the fact that I had just done something irreversible. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, my breath coming too fast. My phone buzzed in my gym bag, but I didn't need to look to know who it was. Travis. I squeezed my eyes shut, my mind racing. What the hell had I just done? At home, Dan was exactly where I had left him, sitting on the couch, staring at the TV, barely looking up when I walked through the door. He didn't ask about my workout, didn't notice the flush in my cheeks, the way my hands still trembled. I should have felt guilty. I wanted to feel guilty. But instead, all I felt was anger. Why did it take another man touching me to remind me I was still alive? That night, I lay in bed next to my husband, staring at the ceiling while he snored softly beside me. I should have been replaying my mistake, feeling the weight of it. Instead, all I could think about was the way Travis had looked at me, the way his hands had felt on my body, the way I had wanted him to touch me again. I told myself it wouldn't happen again. I was wrong. The next time I went to the gym, Travis was waiting. He didn't ask questions. He didn't demand answers. He just smirked and tilted his head toward the locker rooms, and I followed him because I wasn't done, not yet. The second the locker room door clicked shut behind us, Travis had me pressed against the wall. His hands gripped my waist, his body flush against mine, and I let him. God help me, I let him. I knew you'd come back, he murmured, his lips trailing along my jaw. I exhaled shakily, my fingers curling into his shirt. I told myself I wouldn't, he chuckled, his breath warm against my skin. And yet, here you are, he was right. I had spent the last 2 days convincing myself that I had made a mistake, that it was a one-time thing. But the second I saw him again, all of that fell away. It wasn't just about the excitement anymore. It was about the way he made me feel, wanted, desired, like I was something more than just a wife fading into the background. His hands slid lower, pulling me closer, and I gasped at the heat between us. It was reckless, it was wrong, and I didn't care. We didn't waste time. There was no talking, no hesitation, no second guessing, just need. The room was empty, the gym music muffled through the walls, and all I could hear was the sound of my own shallow breaths as Travis claimed every inch of me. I should have felt guilty, I should have stopped. But as his hands gripped my hips, as his lips left a trail of fire across my skin, I knew one thing for certain: I wasn't done with him. And this was only the beginning. For the next few weeks, we were reckless. The stolen moments in the locker room turned into longer sessions in his car, into late-night meetings at his apartment, into something neither of us tried to name. We weren't just sneaking around anymore, we were falling, and I let it happen. At home, Dan didn't notice a thing. He never questioned where I had been when I came home late, never looked twice when I stepped out to run errands. Maybe deep down he knew, or maybe he just didn't care. But Travis, he cared. One evening, as I lay tangled in his sheets, my body still warm from his touch, he turned to me, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "Claire," he said, his voice softer than usual. "How long are we gonna do this?" I tensed. "What do you mean?" he sighed, his fingers tracing lazy circles on my bare skin. "You know what I mean, us, the sneaking around, hiding in gym locker rooms like some high school fling." He met my eyes, and for the first time there was something serious there, something real. "I want more." My stomach twisted. More. This wasn't just a game to him anymore. And the worst part, I wasn't sure if it was just a game to me either. I sat up in bed, pulling the sheet around me, my mind racing. More. The word felt heavy, dangerous. Travis was looking at me differently now, not like I was just a fun secret, a fleeting thrill, but like I was something he wanted to keep. I swallowed hard. "Travis, you knew what this was." He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling slowly. "Yeah, but that was before." His eyes met mine, steady and unflinching. "Before I realized I don't just want you in stolen moments, Claire. I want you for real." My stomach twisted. I had spent months convincing myself that this was just an escape, a way to feel alive again. But now, sitting in Travis's bed, his hand tracing slow circles on my thigh, I realized something terrifying. I had let him believe there was a future here, and I wasn't sure if I had ever meant it. I hesitated. "Travis," he held up a hand. Don't give me some excuse about how it's complicated. I know it is. But answer me honestly, if Dan wasn't in the picture, would you want to be with me?" I opened my mouth, closed it, because I didn't know the answer. I had been so caught up in the rush, the excitement, the way Travis made me feel like someone again. But had I ever really pictured a life with him, a real life? Travis's jaw clenched. He saw my hesitation, and that was all the answer he needed. "Damn," he muttered, shaking his head. "I really thought you felt it too." I reached for him, but he pulled away, standing up, running both hands through his hair. "You need to figure out what you want, Claire, because I can't keep being the guy you run to when you're lonely." Guilt clawed at my chest. "Travis, it's not. I think you should go," he said, cutting me off. His voice was tight, controlled, but I could see the hurt in his eyes. I swallowed hard, my throat dry, my heart pounding as I grabbed my clothes and dressed in silence. By the time I reached the door, he still hadn't looked at me. And as I walked out into the cold night air, the truth hit me like a punch to the gut. For the second time in my life, I had been given a choice between two men. And this time, I might have just lost them both. I drove home in silence, my fingers gripping the steering wheel, my mind tangled in knots. I had told myself this was just a fling, just an escape, but now with Travis shutting the door on me, I felt something I hadn't expected. Loss. I had spent so much time craving attention, feeling invisible in my marriage, convincing myself that Travis was the answer to something I couldn't name. And now he was gone, and I wasn't sure if I had ever really had him in the first place. When I stepped inside the house, it felt different. Maybe it was because for the first time in a long time, I was seeing it for what it really was. A shell, a place where two people lived side by side but not together. Dan was on the couch, exactly where I had left him, beer in hand, eyes glued to the TV. He barely glanced at me when I walked in. "Late night," he muttered. I swallowed hard. "Yeah, Jim ran long." A pause. Then, without looking away from the screen, he said, "You're not even trying to lie anymore, are you?" My stomach dropped, my pulse pounded in my ears. I forced a small, tight laugh. "What are you talking about?" Dan sighed, finally setting his beer down and turning to face me. His expression wasn't angry, it wasn't even surprised, just tired. "Claire, I'm not an idiot." I felt my throat tight. "I don't know what you mean." He let out a short, humorless laugh. "Yeah, you do." He leaned back, crossing his arms. You think I haven't noticed? The late nights? The way you suddenly care so much about going to the gym? You're gone all the time, and when you're home, it's like you're not even here. His jaw tightened. I might not know who, but I damn well know what. I felt lightheaded, like the walls were closing in. How long have you known? I whispered. Dan studied me for a long moment, long enough. The air between us was thick, suffocating. I wanted to say something to explain, to defend myself, but what was there to defend? I had made my choice, and now I had to live with it. Dan exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. So tell me, Claire, now that he's gone, what happens next? The words hit me like a slap. He knew, maybe not every detail, maybe not the name, but he knew, and the worst part, I didn't have an answer. I had spent so much time running, chasing something I couldn't even define. But now that I had nothing left, no lover, no marriage, no excuses, there was only one thing left to face, myself. I took a shaky breath, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know. Dan nodded, as if that was exactly what he had expected. Then maybe it's time you figure it out. The finality in his voice sent a shiver down my spine, because for the first time since this all started, I knew there was no going back. The next morning, the house felt heavier than ever. I moved through the motions, showering, making coffee, staring blankly at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, but everything had changed. Dan wasn't avoiding me, he wasn't yelling, wasn't demanding explanations. He had said everything he needed to say with just one sentence. Then maybe it's time you figure it out. I had spent months convincing myself I was trapped. That my marriage was suffocating me, that I needed an escape, that Travis was the answer to something I couldn't put into words. But now, with both of them gone, I was left with the only truth that had ever mattered. I had done this to myself. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my untouched coffee, the silence of the house pressing in on me. Dan had already left for work. He hadn't kissed me goodbye. He hadn't even looked at me before walking out the door. Maybe that was his answer. My phone buzzed, snapping me out of my thoughts. For a second, my heart jumped, thinking hopping it was Travis, but when I glanced at the screen, it was just a work email. He was really done with me. I closed my eyes, exhaling shakily. This was what I wanted, wasn't it? I had been the one chasing after danger, pushing past every warning sign, throwing away a marriage that wasn't perfect, but wasn't nothing either. And for what? A man who had wanted me only when I was someone's secret. I swallowed hard, gripping the edge of the table. The truth settled in my stomach like a stone. I had burned my entire life down for a thrill, and now I was standing in the ashes. For the first time since this all started, I wasn't thinking about what came next. Because for the first time, there was no next move, no plan, no one left to run to, just me, and maybe, just maybe, that was the scariest part of all.
Thank you for watching the video. If you want to hear more stories, subscribe to the channel and like the video. Videos are released every day. Good luck to everyone.